it only takes 6 patients to all go down at the same time to completely overwhelm our EMS system.
Whoa.
Think about that,
That's
right?
wild.
So now all of a sudden we have this large event like Ironman. Somebody shows up that's, mentally ill and all of a sudden opens fire on a crowd. Like, dude, it's pandemonium, right? There's chaos. And what if you're one of the people that gets hit or somebody that you're with gets hit? Like, do you have anything on you to actually like, hey, I can address this now?
Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the 435 Podcast. I'm your host, Robert McFarland. I'm with Jeff Watkins today and our special guest, Brennan Hill. He's a military intelligence officer with Utah Army National Guard. He's a paramedic, and he's also the owner of Red Desert Rescue. We are talking all things emergency services here in Southern Utah. If you're in Southern Utah, half our population is retired. We got lots of things that could happen, and we want to be prepared for that, so we talk all kinds of stuff. We talk about small stuff to the big stuff. We hope you enjoy this episode, and make sure that you tune in, like, subscribe, share to any friends or family members around here that could value from this conversation. And big shout out to our brand sponsors. We have Tuacahn Amphitheater, FS Coffee Company in downtown St. George, Blue Form Media. You guys are all awesome. We appreciate all the support. Enjoy this episode, guys. We'll see you out there.
We rolling?
We've been
live?
rolling. We've been rolling.
Oh, are you serious?
Yeah, we've been rolling.
We're live.
Nobody ever told me. I'm sorry
That's
for what
what
I
you're
said.
There's no
supposed to
need.
do.
Yeah, there's no need. There's no need, man. So tell me about Red Desert Rescue. I legitimately have no idea.
Yeah, so
What you do.
Red Desert Rescue established in 2023. So some little background about myself. So my name is Brennan Hill. I am a paramedic.
You're just
here.
talking to me, dude. You're just talking to me.
Oh, you
don't
told
have to
me
say-
we were live.
I know. So you just talk to me. Like, just tell me.
Okay. So-
they'll all listen. They're paying attention.
Right.
but
So
yeah.
to understand Red Desert Rescue, you have to understand my background. I started as an EMT basic back in 2009. Did it in high school, loved it. Took a 2-year hiatus after graduating high school, went back to college, figured out that I'd really missed it. So I joined the Army National Guard, Utah specifically, in 2013 as a 68 Whiskey, which is a combat medic, right?
Whiskey.
Oh, whiskey. So you go to 11 weeks of basic training, and then you go to a 16-week, it's called AIT, Advanced Individual Training, where you learn how to be, again, an EMT basic for the first 8 weeks. You get your national registry, and then you go to another 8-week portion after that, which is the quote-unquote whiskey portion. They teach you how to do crikes. They teach you how to give narcotics. Like
I don't know what a
fentanyl.
crike is. You got to back me up.
A crike is when they cut the hole in the throat and you get the little tubey in there to help people breathe.
Wow.
I know 18-year-old kids learn how to do crikes, right? Needle decompressions, where you're sticking needles in people's chests. So that's all TCCC, or Tactical Combat Casualty Care. And we'll kind of talk a little bit about that later. And then once I got done with that, I came back, got done with college. I joined ROTC while I was in college. So I commissioned as an officer in the United States Army in 2017. Kind of pursued trying to do cool guy stuff there for a number of years. Then I was in the National Guard, right? Didn't work out, which is fine. Where 2020, I was like, man, I want to go back and do EMS. So 2019, that's when I was thinking that. 2020, I went to paramedic school. 2020, obviously, we all know there's that little virus thing that kind of.
I don't know what you're talking
Oh, you
about.
never heard of it? Yeah,
No, I don't know
it's
what you're
called.
talking
It was what was the name of it? I think it was COVID. Yeah. So that all happened, which was cool for me as a paramedic because I graduated in December, and I went straight from there to New York City actually to work in the ICU as a pseudo RN, if you would, during the pandemic. They just were so short staffed with ICU nurses, ER nurses, you name it. They were actually bringing paramedics in from around the country to go.
So
and do critical care.
like? It was a deployment, or it was like, hey, we need help, and then it was like a
Yeah,
volunteer
it was
setup?
actually a private company that did it. It's called RVT Solutions. It has since been dissolved, but it was cool, man. Got to rub a lot of elbows with a lot of people. I actually spent 5 months there.
Wow.
From January to June, July-ish. I took a little bit of time off to go do some other training.
This is in 21.
Yep, 2021. So, I mean, the pandemic was still going on, especially in New York City, right? Like, I mean, you heard all of those rumors about the morgues getting full. You had the reefer trucks outside that were putting bodies in. Those actually were all true. But, I mean, again, it's it's a rabbit hole, right? We can talk more about that later. But after New York,
I want to know about the reefer trucks, full bodies.
oh, we'll talk about them for sure. After New York, I met a friend there. I was working with a bunch of like 18 Delta, Special Forces medics, PJs, some Force Recon guys.
Legit dudes.
Dude, like actual legit hitters, man. I was like, man, I wish I was more of a man. But then I
think about that every day.
Really?
I wish I was more of a man.
You think about it, or your wife tells you?
Hey.
Oh, zing.
She would never. She's loyal. She loves me.
Met my buddy Tyler Olson. He owns his own company called Minuteman EMS, and he's like, hey, do you want to come do wildland fires as a paramedic? I'm like, bro, like real life? Yeah, duh. So I somehow convinced this guy that was in charge of a rescue team to let me on. Luckily, the Army, right? I mean, I had done air assault school. I'm like, yeah, I know some knots and stuff like this. I've rappelled out of helicopters. He's like, oh, cool.
I know a couple of knots.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there at the campfire trying to do just a normal knot.
Exactly.
My kids are looking at me. I'm like looking on my phone at like how to do it. I'm like, I can't do
Square
any
knot.
knots.
They're fun, man. And then, so he let me on. So I did that first summer in 2021. I was on what's called a REMS team. It's the Rapid Extrication Module Support, where you provide all the technical high and low angle rescue along with advanced life support or ALS medical capabilities to wildland fire incidents. Oftentimes we're hanging out with hotshots, smoke jumpers, like you name it, right? Like we'll just be positioned somewhere on the fire to help. I did that, and then that summer of 2021, after I got done with that, I went out to a Native American reservation called Pine Ridge. It's in South Dakota. It's about 2-ish hours from Rapid City, right next to Badlands, which is that national park.
Yeah.
Did 911 there for a number of months. That was pretty crazy. And
You
then
saw some wild stuff out there.
dude, the res is a different place, man. Like, I mean, again, strong opinions, just
I guess
basic.
it
because I
depends
live
on
there.
which reservation.
It definitely, absolutely. But got done with that, came back in 22, and then started my help with my friend, starting business, did another fire season. And then I was like, man, I want to do all of this on my own. That's when 2023, boom, Red Desert Rescue comes around. I'm like, I'm just going to start it. So what Red Desert Rescue is, or what I hope to make it someday, is just an education company. Obviously, we provide all of those EMS capabilities to wildland fire incidents. I have a mobile clinic. I've got a UTV that we'll use to go and provide medical support. But on the off-season side of things, what I've really been
When
dumping
people
a lot
don't
of
need
time-
rescued
yeah.
in the off
Well,
season.
hey, man, you'd be surprised.
No, yeah,
Especially here in Washington County.
Seriously, yeah, that's funny. It's not really funny, but you know what I mean.
It's always a good time.
Yeah, like here it's, as compared to, like Montana, you know what I mean? Like you've got people coming here all year round.
All year round,
and
yeah.
then, in the summertime, you've got people getting too hot and exhaustion.
yeah.
In the wintertime,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
still nice weather, so you got people hiking all over.
Dude,
getting
people don't
stuck
understand the high desert. It's like, bro, like you have to drink water here.
Yeah.
Is the winter like more of like when there's more activity going on? And
It depends on the year, man. It really does. So I mean, you have two different little sidetrack. We'll talk about Red Desert Rescue again in a second. We have a number of different agencies that assist in search and rescue operations down here. The primary one is Washington County, right? The Sheriff's Department has their own search and rescue team.
Right.
There's certain subcomponents to that. You have
Which
the
a lot of
high
guys
angle team.
volunteer for, right? Like if I wanted to go
Yep.
volunteer, you can.
Yeah, exactly. You can go and you can do it. So there's the high angle team, there's the ground team, there's the medical team, and then you have like the Swiftwater guys as well. So depending on the year and depending on the weather and everything else, like those guys could get actually slammed.
Yeah.
Spring and fall is huge for us just because, again, like it's southern Utah. Everybody wants to come down here when the weather's
weather,
nice. Nobody
yeah.
wants to be here in 112 degrees
Yeah,
this summer.
it's true.
So when things start to warm up, like, yeah, everybody and their dog comes down. People like to get stuck out at Snow Canyon. That's a super common one.
Isn't there a cliff,
Stuck
like
in
a
the
shelf
Virgin.
that people climb up? It's easy to climb up to, and then you can't get off of
Yeah,
it.
you know, a really common one is Island in the Sky. People love to get stuck on that
Where's
one
that?
a lot. So it's just one of the climbs out in Snow Canyon. In fact, if you go out there, there used to be a flag just a couple
Like
months ago. My
it's
buddies
easy to
picked
get
it
up, but it's like nearly impossible to get down or something like that.
Yeah, it's, well, if you know what you're doing, it's not bad. But again, people are like, oh, I saw this on All Trails. Let's go. This is great. So they'll go and they'll get stuck, and the high angle team actually goes up there quite a bit. But then you have all the
You think they
municipal
put a
parks,
ladder?
too. You'd think, but
Just put a ladder.
It's a state park, so even like the climbing routes, right? I've gone in there and done some trad climb. It's awesome, but if you want to put anything in there, there's a whole board and a committee that has to approve it. Especially if you want to do like all the bolts that are routed, or excuse me, all the routes that are bolted. They're all done by hand. They don't allow power tools in there. Same kind of like the national park. So you'll see guys up there on the wall and just like chinking away with a hammer and a drill bit. It's actually really cool.
There's something I don't get that. Like,
Get what?
Why would they not allow power tools?
It's bad for the environment, sir.
Duh.
The turtles. Think of the turtles.
Listen, bro, you need to listen to my boy Gavin Newsom some more, okay? That's why they don't have gas-powered chainsaws in California. Okay, sorry, getting off topic.
I really want to know why they don't allow power tools.
I think it's more of like the principle of it, right? State parks, national parks.
Why do we get lost over such
traditional-
stupid stuff like this? This is my opinion. Obviously, it's my own, but it seems to me like we get so wrapped. There's something about, and this is an American culture thing. I feel like is that we feel like we have to stand on some principle of like, oh, well, because it's nature, we need to make it as close to nature as possible.
Sure.
And I'm like, well, what are we? Are we not nature? Just because we figured out how to utilize like electricity
and chemicals.
Yeah, like
I think
they're all
think
nature. It's all nature.
Sometimes I think about what the facial expressions of what some of the founding fathers would be if they were involved in some of these conversations. Like, obviously, the founding fathers aren't going to know what a power tool is, right? But
lots of face palms.
Yeah, lots of lots of eye rolls. Like, I think about
Seriously.
John Adams just being like, "What?
What?
You know, rolling his eyes."
Ben Franklin for sure was like, "What? I
invented electricity.
I discovered electricity
I
with a kite and a
discovered
key,
it.
and you guys won't use it
You
to
mean
put
to
a
tell
bolt
me-
on a rock so somebody can climb down, and you don't have to dispatch like experts in like getting people off this."
I will
face
say
palms.
the people who are actually like bolting the routes know what they're doing, right?
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
I'll have to get somebody from the climbing.
It's
community in here
probably
to be an
cool.
advocate.
It's
Yeah.
probably cool that they can do those things, but it's just silly to me that like we make things so difficult. It's so crazy. Anyway,
Yeah, we're good at that
So,
as humans.
but I'm glad you do. I'm glad you go and rescue those people. I'm glad they have somebody there to.
Yeah, well, so I mean, you've got the Washington County SAR guys. We have municipal departments. Santa Clara Ivan's been involved in it. Dameron Valley, they're putting together some stuff. There's a little bit of contention between who's allowed to do what. We're a growing community. We're still trying to figure it out. But yeah, a lot of the guys that I know that are out there, especially on the county search and rescue team, they're awesome. Zion National Park has their own search and rescue team. I've been on that one for about a year. I haven't been able to get on too many of the calls, but I mean, those guys are rad. They are awesome. Zion National Park is its own animal, really.
Oh yeah,
When you look at the terrain and everything else.
and the expanse of it.
Oh yeah, there's no other park like it, and it's I believe the second busiest park right behind Yosemite. That might have changed, but I think I remember looking that up once. And I mean, millions of visitors to that park every year.
Yeah.
I read an article the other day. In fact, it was that article that our buddy on Facebook posted about water that had nothing to do with water.
He
and that
who should not be named.
he should not be named. They were saying that Zion National Park on a per capita basis compared to Las Vegas, or in other words, so if you're looking at Clark County's population versus Washington County's population, the tourism level is like 10 times as much as Vegas.
No,
if you're
wow.
looking at a per capita basis, which is, my opinion, not a very good argument, but because the Vegas population in and of itself is like 3 million or something like that.
Really?
But still, it's a lot of people. It's like 8 million, yearly visitors to Zion National Park. So
Yeah.
I would imagine that the rescues are quite a bit.
You don't see them as much as you think you would. Honestly, it's really interesting.
Like comparatively speaking.
Yeah,
the people coming
absolutely.
in.
Yeah, for the amount of foot traffic that's in there,
Here's the fact checks.
A lot more. Oh, iPad's up. Let's see.
Blue Ridge Parkway, 15 million visits. Have no idea where that is. Golden Gate National Recreation Area, not really a park, 15 million. Great Smoky Mountains National Park, 13 million.
This is per year, right?
12.9. No, this is in 2022.
Oh, okay.
This is as 2022. So Great Smoky Mountains. That makes sense though. They're around a way bigger population.
Oh yeah, the East Coast is
right. And so
crowded.
and I think that's Tennessee. I'm pretty sure it's Tennessee. Gateway National Park, Gateway National Rec Area, also not a national park, 8 million. Lincoln Memorial, Grand Canyon, 4.7. Zion, 4.6. So close to the Grand Canyon. So
Yeah.
pretty good. And that was just in 2022. But we've had, I think we've had better years. We've had slower years. I, for one, am not sad that it's a little slower than.
Yeah, I think
But-
COVID accelerated all the.
Yeah. Well, and we had just a larger population from the West Coast that they couldn't fly, right? And so they were forced to drive somewhere. And then, of course, St. George was the spot to go. And truthfully, this is going back to, luckily, we are kind of out in the middle of nowhere. There's not a whole lot of areas around us to kind of support population. So
For now.
it keeps us, for now. But it kind of keeps it a little bit quieter because Zion, when there's not a lot of people there, it's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing.
Seriously.
But
The
it
same
is
article
huge.
said that Washington County was expecting a population of 700,000 by 2060.
That's crazy.
Dude.
If we had
that's
the
nuts.
water, if we can have the water, truthfully, there's no reason why we wouldn't be able to get that big.
Pipeline from Lake Michigan down here.
The Lake Powell
Perfect.
Pipeline would legitimately, the Lake Powell Pipeline, if we got that, would take us quite a ways.
Are the Powell, wait, the water levels, they recovered, did they not? Because I know it was getting
So-
pretty.
Look that up. See what the
It's-
Lake Powell.
It's recovering. I think it's supposed to increase by like 56 feet this year.
Yeah, I read that according to the
Cloud
estimated.
seeding. We started the whole conversation around cloud seeding.
Well, according to the snowfall in Colorado, because there isn't a head ahead of the river, right? It just all like funnels in, and the Colorado River starts. The estimated snowfall was supposed to increase Powell by 30%.
Oh, wow.
And when I read that, I think Powell was like at 38%, which is massive. Like 58 feet's crazy. Crazy.
Because you read up on all that water stuff. You're kind of like a weird water nerd for Southern Utah.
A water nerd. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's just
I'm definitely a
lot of,
water nerd for Southern Utah.
Yeah, I would say Rob probably is more than me, but like what Rob said, if we have the water, we can support population growth.
Dude,
And there's a lot of controversy, I guess, or argument, I guess, or around, St. George growing, Washington County growing. And it's funny because a lot of the argument comes from people that have made money in other states or other cities and then moved here, and then they get pissed that other people are moving here.
I know.
So it's, there's a lot of that. Anyway, so yeah.
Yeah, there's currently 2.6 trillion gallons of water in Lake Powell.
That's a few. That's a couple.
That's crazy.
And a lot of people are confused and don't understand what the purpose of the Lake Powell Pipeline is too. They think that we're going to suck all the water out of Lake Powell and,
Yeah, so the Lake Powell Pipeline is supposed to take 1%. So this was just when they ran. This is what they went through and have attempted to get approved by the lower basin states. It's actually the lower basin and the upper basin that are a part of this Colorado River Compact. But the flow is less. Yeah, I'm not gonna quote on it because now I can't remember exactly the percentage. But ideally, we'd be taking a straw out of the flow of what is happening through the Colorado River and through Lake Powell. So it's just Colorado River through Lake Powell. We'd take a straw essentially from it, and we'd bring it to St. George, and then we'd run it down the Virgin River. So there'd be a really small period of time where the water is just diverted from its route of where it was headed to begin with. It's basically like a tributary, right? You just change a tributary and you'd have it come through us, and then we'd treat the water because it's water, believe it or not, is a renewable resource because we use it, and then
there's less
goes right
water
back
on
in
the
the
earth
water.
today than what there was 1,000 years ago.
Didn't you know that? So the interesting argument here is that we're diverting water away from its ultimate destination, but that's not true. It would be going down the Virgin River, be going right to Lake Mead. So it's interesting to see what the argument is about, but it's a power argument. It always ends
all
up
about
being
control.
about control.
Yeah. Really, I'll simply put, the Lake Powell Pipeline is going to keep a few reservoirs in Washington County topped off.
Yeah, it's keeping those full. Yeah, and we want to be able to fill up other reservoirs and keep those reservoirs full. And
Warner Valley becoming that next reservoir, right?
yeah, we have the Toker Chief
Yeah.
reservoir, so they're moving forward on that, which will be pretty big. But that's basically just going to get us to the Warner Valley. Like that reservoir is just going to get us enough runway to get to the Warner Valley Reservoir, which hopefully gets us to, get to where the Lake Powell Pipeline makes sense for all of the parties. But they're renegotiating the Colorado River Compact right now. So 2026 is when they're supposed to have solidified, but supposedly they're making pretty good progress on discussions and fair allotment. But the crazy thing is California, they have an allotted amount of water rather than the percentage of the flow of the water. They have a total number of acre feet of water that they are allocated, and they're the only ones out of all the states that they get an actual amount versus a percentage of the flow. So we all have to cut. So everybody else up the chain has to cut their water usage so that California at the end of the line gets a specific amount. Now, when you think of like the negotiating on that, it's great negotiation for California, but it also makes sense that it keeps water in all of the rivers. If at the end of the destination, a certain amount of water has to make it to the end of the destination, then you're going to make sure that you don't deplete too much of that water. So I can see how it makes sense in that order, but it does make for a very challenging situation because then California doesn't have to manage their water at all.
Right.
They just get it.
They just get it. Or like Arrowhead, it's all privatized. So a lot of the water in California is privatized, where all these other states, they can't really have a lot of privatized water. It has to be almost a utility.
Yeah, you guys should be familiar with Peter Zion? He's that geopolitical analyst.
Yeah.
I like a lot of his stuff. Other things I'm like, I don't necessarily agree with it, but he does actually talk about like the water compact in one of his videos that I listened to about a year ago. How Arizona is just kind of like getting the short end of the stick because they were a little late to the party.
It was it was based on population.
Yeah.
And so when they negotiated it, nobody lived in Arizona because it was hot and air conditioning hadn't been invented and like all these things.
Dude, that place is crazy. In fact, I was in Arizona, Tucson Sunday.
Tucson?
Tucson. Yeah, man. I was there for a month. It was a good time.
Nice.
Anyway, dude, I'm sorry. I have ADD. So if I get derailed,
That's weird.
I have ADD.
no way.
You've clearly never listened to this podcast before.
I'm the happy medium here.
Yeah, he's supposed to be keeping us on track. 32% are full. Let's go back. Lake Powell is 32.8% of full. So it's a long way from being full.
Yeah.
However,
Yeah, I think the estimates this year were like 30%. So.
Our growing county, and this goes back to this, is our growing counties, we have a unlimited potential as to how big the county can get and how many people can live here. But we're always going to be limited based off of our resources, right? And so going back to, what you do for Red Desert Rescue, is there a legitimate gap here in Southern Utah for emergency services?
No.
It seems like Washington County, because the county has taken a big lead in that, we get a lot of support from the state. They get quite a bit of funding, and they support that pretty strongly. But what do you think?
Yeah, so Washington County is interesting, right? Because again, we're growing at such a rapid pace. Like we are in growing pains right now when it comes to emergency medical services, which is fine, right? Like that happens all over the country. So just so everybody kind of gets an idea of who the players are, you have Gold Cross Ambulance Services, who I actually work for part-time, right? Doing all the 911 calls in the St. George, Washington County area until you hit Hurricane Valley. Hurricane Valley has become its own fire district. And so they have their own ambulances, and they staff those ambulances. They staff the fire engines. You have Santa Clara Ivans. They do have an ambulance. They are trying to figure out what that looks like for them. So they do transport, and we only have one major hospital here. Obviously, it's St. George Regional. If you get transported anywhere within Washington County, you either if you get hurt in Hurricane Valley, you're going to go to, they have a small ER there now that just opened up last year, or you're going straight to St. George Regional. We do fly people, right? There's Classic, there's Mercy, there is Lifelight that are all around here. So in terms of is there a gap? There's not a gap. We're just trying to figure out how are we going to cover all of this area with all these people coming in? For everybody's edification, there's only really 4 or 5 full-time ambulances on at any given time in St. George.
Wow.
Which is really
in St. George City, or just greater
in
St. George?
St. George City, right?
Wow. And there's a lot of tourism too, so it's hard to predict.
There is.
Like based on population, I would think,
Right.
Because you got people in and out all the time.
And
so.
we're not a busy system. Like we definitely cover our call volume very well. All right. So I mean, again, there is mutual assistance as well. If someone in Santa Clara or if their truck is out on a call and they need help, Gold Cross can cover down for them and go grab.
I've got a family member that's a police officer, and we were kind of talking about the fact that there's a lot of stuff that goes on in St. George City and in the county, but most of it you don't hear about because it's taken care of. And so like the police departments, fire departments, emergency services all operates fairly smooth. Like from a crime aspect, there is crime for sure in the county and in the city, but you just don't really hear a lot about it because the police officers and ancillary services do a really good job.
Well, believe it or not, so Washington County has their own SWAT team, right? And one of the things that you're seeing like coming to life is this thing called Rescue Task Force, where they have active duty police officers, they have full-time police officers, and then they're bringing medics from certain fire departments, right? Two of the guys that are
like to be a part of the team.
Yeah. So they're like, the medics are there on the SWAT team carrying a weapon, stacking the door.
Whoa.
And then they go in with the SWAT team, which is sweet. I've had a lot of interest in that for a long time. And what they do is just there to be that first line of medical aid for that SWAT team, right? And that's where
they just don't have like the tactical training that
they actually do. That's the cool thing about it is they go through the same stuff. So that's TCCC, and now it's TECC, Tactical Emergency Casualty Care, and that's one of the courses that I hope to bring to the county here really soon because there's a lot of talent in St. George. But yeah, this Rescue Task Force, believe it or not, like Washington County has like 20 something SWAT call outs a year, and nobody knows about it. Right. Yeah. And it's just like, dude, like, yeah, it's because they take care of it. It's not a big deal. But what
designates a SWAT like calling out the SWAT?
Anything that has
active shooter.
Anything that there's a big degree of danger in terms of like, hey, this person has a weapon. Because EMS, right? We stage on scene for law all the time. On the res, I didn't. The res was a different story though. But here in St. George, we get a call. Let's say
someone's barricaded themselves in their house.
Absolutely, right? That's a SWAT call. There are things where a law enforcement officer will get on scene. He'll make that determination of like, okay, like there's a threat here. I mean, Washington County has their own bomb team. And in fact, it's really, really good. There's one guy in particular who goes and helps train the FBI out in Alabama all the time.
Cool.
And so it's like, yeah, I mean, again, Washington County, we have St. George is just a weird little microcosm of all these amazing people that people just don't know exist until you start getting the network. For instance, like I have a friend down here who was a 20 plus year Delta operator, right? And I mean, this guy, I'm like, bro, you like live the movies. There's just no movies about you because people just don't know it. You wouldn't even know it, man. You wouldn't pick him out of the line.
Dude's driving like
that's the whole point of being Delta, though, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't be Delta if you can't just blend right in.
Dude,
he's driving like
so
a 2002
cool.
F-150.
Yeah,
you know?
I hang out with them pretty often. And it's actually a Suburban, but I won't tell you the color. He probably doesn't want people to know.
It's probably white.
There's a number of PJs that are down here, guys that were, out in these tier one
Are these guys
units.
like retired? Like
yeah, they all
is
retired out here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, here's the problem though; they're always overseas. Like they still do contracting because given that experience, they're still doing that. There's another guy that is down here who was a 20 plus year flight medic down in Southern California. He was in Haiti just this last 2 months during that huge crisis, working on a helicopter, taking people out. He's been in Africa. So all these people live in St. George and you just wouldn't know. You're like, dude, this is pretty cool. Again, I'm sure there's other cities like it, but I just feel like St. George has this weird dynamic. I mean, you go to
ratio of like population to highly trained professionals. And I've said this a bunch of times. I said this in a couple of different interviews where no matter what we're talking about, we have an insane level of talent in a an insane level of different other fields too, whether it's technology, whether it's like recreation and outdoors and fitness, whether it's education, right? So some of the like Atwood Innovation Plaza, like some of the educators that we have that are at Utah Tech, whether they're in a retired position or they're just in this transitionary, spot in their career where they found St. George and they want to contribute to this, community. But we have this really high level of talent for a pretty small population, truthfully, right? And so it is pretty cool to see, and it is a lot of times just goes unrecognized because you just don't hear it.
Yeah. And a lot of these people, again, like they've done like real world, like legit stuff too. I mean, they're generally pretty humble people. Like, honestly, that's been my experience. The people who have actually gone out and done like crazy things, I'm like, dude, you wouldn't know. They don't talk about it. I'm like, dude, you're rad.
That's cool.
It's the guys who are like really like the ones on social media that are like barking, right? Look at me, I'm so
The
cool.
gurus.
Yeah, it's like, well, what have you actually done? Oh, you did it once? Oh, okay, cool, man. Whatever. Again, that's I'm painting a broad swath of people with a
No,
large brush,
you're
but
accurate. That's accurate.
it doesn't. It's case by case, but yeah, for sure, it's a good thing. I mean, so Red Desert Rescue. I mean, what I want to do is bring those type of classes with those type of people to St. George, where people can go in and they can be like, dude, like I want to learn this sort of stuff. With everything that's happening in the world right now, because that's my other hobby, I guess, part-time job. I'm a military intelligence officer in the Utah National Guard. I've been in intel now for 7 years, and that's what I was doing in Arizona. I was at a 1-month military intelligence captain's career course. And a lot of it was, we do talk about current events. We do go inside the skiff, which is like that cool room. You have to leave your phone out and stuff. And we talk about, okay, like what are current global threats and things like that. And right now, like there are a lot of really important things that people like, again, you get caught in your own life, especially in St. George. We live really in a bubble, man. It's amazing. It's
pretty cushy.
It's so cushy.
Yeah.
You just go your day to day and not much of the outside world really affects us, even during COVID, right? Like, dude, COVID was pretty quiet here comparatively. I mean, again, you go to New York, it's totally different.
Yeah.
But offering things like stop the bleed classes, helping train other agencies with some of these guys who have gone out and done things. They're kind of on board to come and help out with TECC or TCCC classes. And just kind of helping prep people in the day to day. So if something were to occur, like they're like, oh, I remember how to do this. But not only is it applicable to like, one-off black swan event type of scenarios, but like day to day, like I really feel that the most important thing that I teach at Red Desert Rescue, again, outside of fire season, outside of working on the ambulance, I teach at the university, the EMS program, like some of the paramedic students there. But I'm also teaching these stop the bleed courses, which you could apply to mountain biking. You can apply to car accidents. I have a friend.
Side by sides. We were talking about side by sides. I mean, there's so much outdoor recreation that you could fall on a trail and impale yourself.
It happens all the time.
And you're like, oh no.
Dude,
this went
side by sides.
This just went from a nice casual hike to now I'm bleeding out of my leg and I don't know what to do.
Just in the small time that I've worked here in Southern Utah, again, because I've been traveling the past 3 years doing all this other stuff, like one of the most common, like serious traumatic incidents occur from side by sides because people come here. They're like, dude, let's go to Mad Moose and rent these machines.
Shout out to Mad Moose.
Yeah, Mad Moose.
Shout
Did you see that one that caught on fire yesterday?
I didn't.
It had some.
I always miss the good stuff.
It had extra gas tanks on it.
No.
I don't know if it was a rental or whatever, but there were some videos of it.
Not for Mad Moose.
I'm not sure.
They've got some good make sure not Mad Moose.
It wasn't the fault of the side by side itself. It
just caught fire. Just one.
No,
fire.
It flipped. It flipped, and that
Okay,
thing.
that's where I'm going. Is one of the most common things is side by sides flip. People have
They're
their
not
arm
buckled in.
outside of the window. And it gets meat markered, right? I shouldn't use that term. Meat.
Yeah,
you're going fast. It gets caught outside underneath the machine, and yeah, like it meat markers the pavement.
Well, didn't Jordan roll his side by side?
Jordan Hess,
and he broke his leg, right?
Leg.
That's crazy. Dude.
It happens
just like,
all the time.
I
had a friend,
and we're not talking like raging side by sides. It's not like they're it's some extreme trail that they're out there and then it, hits a jump and rolls. No, we're talking about like
it just happens.
It just gets off on an angle going up a hill, and that was it.
I have a
Human
friend who
nature,
just
you put
lost
your-
his arm on one because that's what happened.
He lost his arm?
He lost his arm. It was right outside the window. I mean, he's a young kid.
Keep
He's
your
awesome. He's
hands and
17.
arms inside the vehicle at all times.
it's
Seems
I
I
like
think
an obvious
normal
thing.
reaction though, like, you put your arm
It's human reaction. That's exactly what it is. Like, I'm going to stop this, and it doesn't work. Like that, or it happens so fast, you just don't know.
You just don't know.
And that in that case, right? Like, what's going to be the thing that kills somebody first? It's extremity hemorrhage or like bleeding out. Like, and that's why, like, hey, have tourniquets. Know how to use it, how to stop the bleed. Uncontrolled extremity hemorrhage is one of the leading preventable deaths from trauma in the U.S. And it's like, man, it's not hard to carry a tourniquet around. There's a company up north near Salt Lake City that make everyday carry tourniquets. And dude, they're so small. They're about this big. In fact, I have one in my truck. I should have brought it in. But I mean, it's just carry it around with you, and that could save somebody's life, especially if you're out on a side by side. Like, dude, one of my business ideas, somebody else don't take this because there are other people with actual capital out there and I don't have it.
This is the problem. Most people, I give my ideas away freely because if I don't have the time to do it, hopefully somebody else does, but most of the time nobody's going to do it. It's like, oh, that is a great idea. I'm going to keep doing this thing that I'm doing over here.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'm
going to
start building like med kits down here and selling them at certain places, especially it's like, hey man, just throw this in the side by side. You're good to go. My Medic sells them. Rhino Rescue sells them. North American Rescue, they're actually based out of Las Vegas. They're a huge player in the game. In fact, they contract with the Army, so all the stuff that we use as medics, a lot of it's North American Rescue stuff. It's not hard to go on Amazon and just buy a med kit and have it with you. But if you don't know what you're doing with it, right? Like, I mean, that's the other side of the flip coin. You got to invest a little bit in your education.
So is the classes, like some of these classes that you're teaching, are they just open to the public? Is it just like any random person with no experience, or do you have like different tiered classes?
Stop the Bleed is specifically tailored for a lay rescuer, somebody who has no idea what's going on. Come into the class, we'll get you trained up in like 2-3 hours and be like, okay, cool. Like, you are now blessed off. You know how to do a tourniquet. We do wound packing. We do chest seals, that type of thing where you're like, okay, like there's a hole. I need to plug the hole, make sure it's not bleeding anymore, and call 911, right? Because then the paramedics are going to show up. We're going to do our thing. We're going to get them to the hospital where they need to be, especially with that type or degree of injury. Often they required some sort of surgery or whatever. But I mean, that's the most important thing, is making sure that they have enough blood in them to oxygenate and get to where they need to go.
Yeah.
Because I mean, generally on average, a little fun fact, nerdy stuff. Humans have, like, if you're a big dude, maybe max like 6 liters of blood, right? That's it. Women have anywhere from like 3 to 5 liters of blood. So you're thinking about a liter, like a 2-liter bottle of Coke. If you lose that much blood, like a 2-liter bottle of Coke, which really isn't all that much, like, bro, you are in bad shape. And what do you need? You need whole blood, right? And who has whole blood? The hospital.
Yeah.
So stopping the bleed, making sure that you have enough blood, and then quick transport, getting you there to where you need to go to definitive care. Those are the 2 most important aspects.
So the interesting thing to me is, like, so you go do this class, and then you're like, hey, you're ready to go. But part of me thinks that part of the class should be like, randomly in the next 6 months, I'm going to stop by your house and I'm going to be like, quick test, pop quiz.
You just got shot in the leg. Go.
You just got shot in the leg. What do you do? You know, because I think there's this, as you're talking about that, like, as I'm thinking, I'm starting to empathize with like those moments. And like my hands started getting sweaty, like
That's
my
a good
stomach.
idea. Because
It's a lot of it's a mental thing too. A lot of it is like, you can know, you could go to a class and you could kind of know the basics, but how long before you're like, wait, what do I do? I forgot the steps. You know what I mean?
There's a term for that. So it's stress inoculation, right? And what they found in studies is that you're going to rely on your training. Like, when your brain starts to shut down because you've got a dump of adrenaline, you're going to rely on muscle memory. And that's why you train, because you're like, oh, I watched a YouTube video on it once, but you've never done it. Like, getting that hands-on creates neural pathways in your brain of like, oh, am I allowed to swear on here?
Sure.
Okay, shit just hit the fan. No, sorry.
Mallory, edit that out, please.
Okay, shiz hit the fan, right?
Never.
What are you gonna do? And
Yeah.
but if you've done it and you're like, I don't have time to think, I just have to do it.
Yeah.
That's why you come to a class and we put hands on.
Yeah.
And like the class is good, man. So again, I've only done a handful of them. I've taught some Army units. I've taught the Modern Warriors gun shop. Freaking those guys are rad. And they did that, right?
Yeah.
After I got done teaching them, they have a reel on Instagram where they went up to Alex and they're like, hey, so-and-so just got shot in the leg, go. And they timed him, right? And
Yeah.
they all carry tourniquets on him. Dude, it was rad. He had that thing slapped on and tightened down in less than 20 seconds. I was like, dude,
that's awesome.
Oh, they grow up so fast.
It's
so great.
Oh, look
Yeah.
at my little guys.
Yeah, but it's just
I
like, oh,
remember
man.
when they didn't even know what a tourniquet was.
I mean, a lot of those guys are vets and
Yeah,
they know, but
true.
at the same time, like, yeah, you rely on your training, right? And that's why, again, like, I'm so stoked that people have an interest and want to come because you never know, man. Like, look at the events that have been happening currently, like just recently. Look at Uvalde. Super small town, dude. And we have all these shooters, like all these
I think about this
parades.
all the time.
All the
I think about this all the
time,
time.
right?
Like St. George is not immune
It's
to
not.
whether it's a mass shooting or something along those lines, but just disasters of a whole myriad of things
Right.
could happen. We're
But
not immune to it.
We have all the sense, like false sense of security, in my opinion, because it's so good here. And it's
Yeah.
just like, dude, like, are you guys actually prepped for this? Are you ready for this? I mean, dude, look at Stagecoach, right? People drove down to Vegas back in 2018. Stephen Paddock freaking opened fire on that crowd. Bro, wish everybody had a tourniquet at that point because how many people would have been able to like actually get back and be good? How many? I mean, dude, I think there was like 90 plus.
He lived in
casualties.
Mesquite. That's 20
Yeah.
minutes from here, you know?
Dude,
Like, you never.
freaking crazy, right? So, I mean, dude, whenever I'm out like and about on any like the fairs out here, anything that has a large gathering of people, like guess what? You just became a target.
Which
right?
now we're having more and more, right? Whether
More
it's
and
the
more.
side by sides, like we're having
Yeah.
Trail Hero and what's the other UTV takeover?
Yeah.
That's coming out in October. We
Yeah.
have the World Senior Games. We have the PGA Tour. We have
Ironman.
Ironman.
Exactly,
We have,
right?
Like we have so
I mean,
many
dude, and
huge
that
events.
just brings everybody here to St. George, and it's so scenic here. Everybody wants to come here,
Right.
But as we have more and more of these big gatherings, like, dude, so there's this term, right? It's mass CAS or mass casualty incidents, MCIs. Dude, absolutely, that's a real possibility. And like I mentioned before, 5 or 6 at any given time, 5 or 6 ambulances. That's it. You know how quickly we'll be overwhelmed as an EMS system if something were to go down?
I don't. How
Guess
quickly?
what? It only takes 6 patients to all go down at the same time to completely overwhelm our EMS system.
Whoa.
Think about that,
That's
right?
wild.
So now all of a sudden we have this large event like Ironman. Somebody shows up that's, mentally ill and all of a sudden opens fire on a crowd. Like, dude, it's pandemonium, right? There's chaos. And what if you're one of the people that gets hit or somebody that you're with gets hit? Like, do you have anything on you to actually like, hey, I can address this now? So, I mean, again, bias, right? This is what I do for a living. Like,
These are real things, though. I think these are real things that tend to go undiscussed at in a large scale, especially like in a community.
Yeah.
I think they get discussed in like families, and you have like these smaller networking groups of individuals that talk about these things. But it's not. I don't find it to be as ubiquitous across the community as I think it probably should be.
right.
But I mean, this is just like a step towards it, right? So thinking about those. How well do you think we're organized, with all these different emergency services? What are the first steps? Like, let's say we have a mass casualty and we have ambulances that are overwhelmed. What happens then? Like, where does leadership fall into place? Maybe help me understand, what in those situations, what happens? Who rises as the contact person of, issuing out, leadership?
So as
in those
soon,
moments?
like everything goes through dispatch, right? Somebody calls 911, it goes to the dispatch, and we have dispatchers that's their full-time job. And then they page out to all these different resources in the county.
Did I make this up? Is dispatch here in St. George, or is it somewhere else?
It's co-located with the sheriff's department.
Okay, but they are like the humans that take the calls are here in St. George.
Yeah,
Okay.
they are.
I heard somewhere else, somebody like they were saying how dispatch isn't always ever even in the same state. It's like some states have dispatchers that are across.
They talk to dispatch up in Salt Lake sometimes, right? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens within the state that is joint, right? It's connected, but that's this whole little rabbit hole we can go into.
I like rabbit holes.
You
Okay,
like
keep
it?
going. Keep going.
Well, what I want to get at is the fact that we have our ambulances, but I mean, we also have our fire departments too, right? And all the fire departments, I mean, Washington City Fire, they're freaking awesome. They're super good at what they do. We have St. George Fire, and they all have medical equipment, but they just don't have the ambulances to transport, right? So they would show up on scene. They can help treat, triage, do all these things. But I mean, when you think about the St. George ER too, right? I mean, we've only got like 30 beds.
Yeah.
Ish. So
I've been there.
Yep. Oh, really? Why?
I have broken arms.
Oh, poor guy. So
And then
brave.
my next door neighbor's husband and wife, they're both ER nurses.
Yep.
Yeah.
So 30
Shout out
beds.
to Zach and McCall.
Hey guys.
Dude, they're awesome.
Hey guys. Thank you for doing that. That's a tough job too.
Oh.
So you have these situations. So dispatchers dispatch out, and they kind of are they taking kind of the lead at the beginning of like, hey, this is where we need people at
Yeah,
this time?
I mean, that's the first line, right? Somebody calls and that dispatcher's like, okay, what do I need? What resources are available? What do I need to get there? Let's say it's downtown St. George, Main Street.
Town square.
Something happens, right? And you've got 30 people that are injured.
Yeah, we walked by it yesterday at the splash pad, little downtown. There was probably 150 people there.
No way. Doing
Yeah,
what?
during the art festival,
Yeah, like
man.
a bunch of kids and just weren't running around. Maybe not 150, but
Right.
for sure 100 people
Yep.
just floating around
But
downtown.
I think at like the art festival, there's like, a couple thousand people
Thousands, yeah.
just walking around, and there's not a lot of uniformed officers that are like, truthfully, there's not a big enough budget, truthfully, to have a ton of officers at the event, fully paid, in uniformed officers to run some of these events. It's just not possible. And from what I understand is a lot of them will go to those events not uniformed, but go there as their family, just as just in case. It's almost like they take it upon themselves to be like,
Right.
I'm gonna stay close over
like
here
they're
just in
off
case.
duty. But
They're off duty, but they're
Yeah.
that they're there.
I mean, it's something that happened. Let's bump the numbers up, right? Let's say we've got 50 to 60 people that need immediate medical attention. It's obviously going to be chaos because everybody's calling 911. Everybody's trying to get through to dispatch. That dispatcher is the one that's in charge of looking at the puzzle and saying, okay, how do I fit these pieces together? What's actually going on? How do I paint an accurate picture? How do I get an accurate description of what is actually needed? And okay, let's start freaking just activating everybody, right? So tones are going to go off in the fire departments. Tones are going to go off the Gold Cross stations. They're going to get in the trucks where they're going to go. But the first thing is they got to make sure the scene is safe, right?
Yeah.
Is PD already on scene? Is the SWAT team there? Who is doing what? So it gets messy. Really fast.
Yeah, it seems like it.
And you can't, as a person in that type of scenario, can't depend on EMS getting there to save you if I've got 50 other patients that might be more critical than you. Like,
so
sorry,
at that
man,
point,
this is triage.
Who's going to step up, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like if you show up, I'm a huge proponent of fanny packs, dude. And I've got a tourniquet, I've got chest seals, I've got
could see
compact
that.
gauze. Oh, dude, I love it.
I could see that.
I've got some other things in my fanny pack that I can also
Taser.
tools. Something a little bit stronger than a taser.
Fingernail clippers.
Yeah,
Fingernail clippers.
I do have mini trauma shears. They work.
They work great.
But bring that, I take that with me everywhere, right? And that's all it is. It's like I have the sense of mind where I know like triage is going to be happening, but I need to save my buddy or my family member. Like, dude, I have that with me. Boom, I can get it. Buys me some time, right? Because again, like it gets so chaotic so fast. And you just never know, man. You really never know. What's the point of... all it takes is one event. Will it ever happen? Hopefully not, right? Like chances are very slim. However, if it's that one chance that it does happen, I'm going to be super grateful that I've got that stuff on me.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it doesn't cost me any energy to just carry this around with me.
So what I'm hearing you say is, in those emergency situations, as much as we have enough coverage, we have SWATs, we have firefighters, we have paramedics, we have all these. In those moments, it's going to come down to individuals within those groups, individual leaders, individuals that are prepared for those moments, that are not relying upon the typical standard services. Am I hearing you right?
Absolutely,
Right? Because
right.
the chaos, it's unmanageable. There's no way to control. There's too many moving variables.
Right.
And that each individual person. My feeling is that over the last few decades, the lack of leadership within communities, but within community in general, right? I'm gonna paint a broad brush here, but there's less individuals that are equipped in a leadership position, whether it's they just know what to do in some of these emergency situations to take a lead role. Would you do you think that's true, or am I just being a kind of a pessimist around?
No,
I
would
couldn't help
say,
but feel that during COVID there was just no leaders. I was looking around. I was like, "There's no leaders anywhere. Where are all the leaders at?"
So how cool would it be if so Washington County's population is what, 200,000? Call it 200,000. What if 10% of the county, 5% of the county was always carrying around one of those fanny packs?
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like
I think
10,000
and know
people,
how to use it too, right? Like,
or if you're in an event with 1,000 people. I mean, if 50 of those people were carrying around a fanny pack,
it would help for sure.
It would help a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure.
And again, like you do have people that do have an everyday carry where they actually do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I mentioned it's those guys at Modern Warriors, they've got it. I'm
Well,
sure
Washington
there's a lot of
So that's why I was
guys that
thinking,
work around.
am I just being overly pessimistic? Is I just don't see them because they're Delta guys, or they're these guys that they're walking around. You just don't really notice them, but they are ready, they are prepared, because it seems like you're in that community.
Well, there's a
That's
lot
a
of people
tough
carrying
question.
guns here too.
Yeah, because I just don't know, to be honest, man. Like it could be that there's really very little, but there could be like that it's a lot, and we just don't know. I would say again, I'm erring with you, where I'm a little bit more of a pessimist, where I don't see it, where I'm like, okay, hold on. I had a thought, and I was like, do I want to go down this hole? I will. Okay. Just being a healthy person, right? Just being a healthy person, that shows me that, okay, you can help an emergency situation.
Right.
How many
Able-bodied,
people,
right?
dude?
Yeah.
Okay, so in college, my degree was in epidemiology, right? Public health with an epidemiology emphasis. And I looked at a lot of data sets about the health of Americans. And dude, the data will blow your mind, where we went from the 90s to where we are in 2024. Obesity has skyrocketed, where if you're in the South, it's like every 1 in 2. And it's crazy, right? So again, I'm talking about health. I'm not trying to put shame on anybody or anything else, but it's like, are you physically capable in any sort of environment to be like, hey, I'm hit because somebody just opened up fire on this crowd. Can you drag me out? Probably not if you're that unhealthy, right? So
This might not be a popular segment, but have you seen Zombieland? Have you seen Zombieland? So he's talking about like the rules, like in Zombieland world, and number 2 was cardio, because all the zombies caught all the overweight people first, and all of them are slow.
I know.
And so he's like, just
It's
cardio,
so
like, and
funny.
he's like running around the parking lot of the gas station. Dude, it's so funny.
'Cause here's the thing,
I was
man.
laughing so hard.
I really don't want to be insensitive, right? Like, I mean, I work with these patients
can't
every
help
day.
it. Some people can't help it.
Right.
Most people can help it.
But like, there's a big thing to be said where it's like, hey man, like you've got this. Like you can go exercise and all. I mean, you just walking, right? You don't have to be a gym rat. You don't have to be a crazy strict nutrition nerd. But just walk after your meals. Like watch what you eat. Like try to get rid of that extra so that if something were to happen, I saw this one video, super sad, right? This lady had taken she had like her baby in a stroller. I don't know if you guys have seen this. The stroller they're parked in the car and right across from a super busy street. And this lady had somehow let go of the stroller, and this stroller with a kid in it is starting to go towards this like freeway style street. I have no idea where this
turned her back
occurred.
or something.
Yeah, and I mean there's cars going by every second, right? Super busy, and the lady is pretty unhealthy. And she trips, she stumbles, and she's trying to get up, frantically trying to get up to try to catch the stroller with a kid in it that's headed towards this busy street, and she can't do it.
Yeah.
And luckily, right, some stranger comes from out of the screen and grabs this stroller before it gets hit by a car, where it would have killed that child for sure. But this mom just was so unfit and so unhealthy, she didn't have the physical capacity to get up and to go run towards that stroller to save it. And I'm like, dude, like that type of stuff. It's like, hopefully it was a wake up call. Like, hey, like if something happens and you want to be physically fit enough to like be able to make sure you're okay and your family's okay.
Yeah.
Start working out, man. Like go be fit, go do these things.
Well, and I think there's something to be said for if you're not able to take care of your own body and you're not even injured, right? And you're not able to take care of yourself, you're a burden on those that can take care of themselves, right? And so it's everybody kind of taking their own responsibility for their health and their safety, right? And so that's why I think this is such an interesting thought as we go through CPR classes and like first aid. There's a lot of like basic first aid classes, but you know, what are some of the more specific things that we could do within our community to really prepare ourselves for when things aren't going, you know, perfect utopian southern Utah, like everything is great and we don't really have anything bad that happens here, right? Because
Totally.
it's not reality.
And that's the thing is like the courses that I teach are niche-y, right? Like not everybody, somebody could see a flyer for Stop the Bleed course, but whatever, I don't need that. But there are a lot of people that are down here who are like, oh, you know what? Like given the circumstances and what's going on, there's some crazy things going down. I want this. And I'm like, dude, yes, like come, like let's spend a couple hours together. Or you're going to walk out that door and be like, dude, I freaking feel ready. I've got a warm and fuzzy. That's my goal, right?
Yeah.
And dude, the people that I work with, right? Like I'm the CEO. I'm the guy who founded or started Red Desert Rescue, but there's some incredible paramedics and other people here that want to be a part of it that are like, they know way more than I do. And they specifically shout out to Derek Liston, right? He works for Gold Cross Ambulance, incredible paramedic, was a flight medic for like 7 years, has been a paramedic for 18 years.
Wow.
And he comes and teaches the courses with me. And I'm like, dude, like if I'm gone, because again, I travel a lot, I do a lot of contracting, he's going to go in and he's going to teach and you're going to be like, dude, that guy is super smart, knows everything. I feel ready. So, I mean, that's the goal, right? Is I really want to scale it where people know and they can tell their friends like, hey, go do this. Again, there's an everyday application where it's like, if you work in any sort of construction, you work in anything, that might involve very traumatic scenarios occurring, heavy machinery, you name it.
If you're going outdoor, like I want to be a part of this just because I like to go hiking. I like to ride my bike. I like side by sides. I'm going to be put into those situations sometime in the next 12 months. It seems like to me, what are the best tools that I can do to be ready for all of the situations? I want to be able to have fun, but I also want to make sure that if it doesn't go perfect, that I'm prepared to do it. It seems,
Everyday
obvious,
applications.
especially as a dad, like for my
for
boys.
sure.
Like I just can't imagine is me being not prepared for something to happen and I'm watching my son and he's bleeding and I'm just not 100% prepared knowing what to do. It seems like such a basic course, but can really change.
And I'll tell you, man,
Change in a big way.
As a 911 provider, those are the worst calls, right? Anything to do with pediatrics, I just wish we could just freaking not have that happen, right?
Yeah.
It's those are the calls that people leave the field because of. And
Yeah.
it makes sense. But yeah, just having that little bit of extra know-how, like, dude, totally helps. Cardiac arrests are on the rise, right? If you want to do CPR classes, we can do CPR classes, go over an AED. How does that work?
Choking probably is a big
Choking's a big one. Yeah, there's some really cool tools out there. LifeVac is a really cool
Drowning.
one for
Oh, yeah.
get one of those, honestly, man. They
LifeVac's
freaking work and they're freaking dope.
So how often are you doing classes?
So that's what I'm working on, right? So a little bit of life history for me recently. I got back from last fire season. We ended in November. I went out and taught a woofer class. Oh, that's another thing we talk about. I'm trying to get WUFA and woofer. WUFA is Wilderness First Aid, and woofer is Wilderness First Responder classes here in St. George. Keep an eye out for those.
So I'm laughing because my
Woofer.
I was helping a client of mine look at homes, and he's like, "Oh, that's a woofer," and I was like, "A woofer?" And I look in there, and it's the bathroom. He's like, "Yeah, the toilets, the woofer." And then he laughs. He's like, "Bet you never heard that before." I was like, "No."
Where's he from?
I haven't.
Minnesota?
No.
Some weird.
He's from here.
What?
Yeah.
Why
he's
does he
from
call it
here.
a woofer?
I don't know. Didn't ask, but that's when you said that. I couldn't
Probably
help
an
but think.
acronym for something.
He's got some
must
gastrointestinal issues, and
Not to
every
be
time he
confused
uses
with
the
the toilet.
restroom, it barks at him.
Woofa.
Yeah, WUFA, Wilderness First Aid, WFA, and WUFR, WFR, Wilderness First Responder.
Okay.
There's
Sorry.
also,
See ADHD. Just
dude,
squirrel.
I get it.
Woofer.
Dude, same.
Okay.
So there's a number of companies that teach WUFR classes. Okay, yeah, Jeff, this is your job. You have to get me back on track after I get done with this because I don't remember where my thought process was. Knowles is a huge one. They're kind of taking the industry by storm. There's a Venture Med here in Utah. I teach with Solo. It's Stonehearth Outdoor Learning Opportunities.
There's too many acronyms. I can't keep
Yeah,
them straight.
I know.
That's
There's
why I
so
would
many
fail in the
companies.
military. I'd be like, wait a minute, what is
Bro,
that? I
it's
can't
another
remember.
language, man. Oh my gosh, don't even get me started.
I was actually just talking to Joanne Brenton. This is last week's episode, and she was talking about how there's so many acronyms in like the education system, just in schools in general.
Yeah.
And I was saying how Elon Musk, he banned it. You can't in Tesla and SpaceX, you can't use acronyms.
That's cool.
It's against the rules. It's
Yeah.
a fireable offense. Second offense, he fires
He's
you.
out.
They troll the email. If you use an acronym in an email, he'll find it. He has
That's
the
crazy.
system set up to where it sniffs out acronyms.
Oh, that's cool.
It's
Yeah.
tough to you get these information silos, and it's tough to communicate when you're talking in acronyms.
Right.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm tracking.
cool.
So you're going back to the classes, like how often you're doing it. So
You were talking about your life history,
sorry. Yeah,
yeah,
thank you.
had-
That's where I
you had
was.
some things.
which includes many, many babies.
Yeah, you know.
Many babies.
Yeah. So I just had
Congratulations on the twins.
thanks. I'm still stressed.
One baby is
Right.
stressful. Two
And that's
babies
why-
is twice as stressful.
Yeah, man. So we had 2 under 5 already. We accidentally got pregnant last fire season.
Accidentally.
Yeah, bro, hey, it was. We did not need kids. And then we caught the silver bullet. We had twins on March 7th. So that kind of threw a wrench in the works in terms of like when these classes are happening. And then I had to leave for a month for military training. And now that I'm back, depending on what this fire season looks like, whether or not I just applied for a new job down here, whether or not I get that, they could be happening. I wanted to make them like a monthly or bi-monthly thing, where Modern Warriors, again, I've mentioned them 3 or 4 times now. They're awesome. They've opened up their classroom to us. So I have an Instagram up. I've got a website as well, but it's under construction. Again, man, I've just had my hands in 6 different.
You're just getting this thing rolling. That's good. So,
Right.
what's the Instagram?
So the Instagram is Red Des Rescue, red.dez.resq. If you go on there, I'm going to start posting regular class schedules about when they happen. The first ones are going to start occurring at that classroom down at Modern Warriors, and then if it has enough public interest and we get enough people, then we can find other places to teach. I know the university will rent out classrooms, so it could be just like, a weekend thing. I'm faculty there. Like I mentioned, I teach the EMS program. So it could reserve one there. It all just depends, right? And then that woofer and that woofa classes, the woofa is like a 2-day thing. The woofer is way longer. It's 8 to 10 days where you're out in the woods learning how to really like do patient assessment.
That sounds awesome.
Treat all these
That
things.
does sound awesome.
Yeah, I mean that one I'm really excited about. So that one will hopefully be coming this summer.
Do you have age? Is there going to be age restrictions?
No, I mean as long as like you're able to really grab the concepts, bring them, dude.
What do
right?
you think? Like as a high schooler, like what age would be a
I mean,
15?
Yeah, I'd say 14, 15 areas. But like, it's a lot of information, man. But if they're into it, and like, I mean, that's the thing. If they're into it, they're going to grasp it. They're gonna be like,
I think
"Dude,
those
this is
ages,
awesome."
like those, like between 12 and 15,
Yeah.
like before they get a car, you know what I mean? Like before they have like this idea that they've figured out all the things, you know what I
Right.
mean? It's like
they're invincible.
when they think they know everything. That's like especially when it comes to something specialty
Yeah.
like this, is like you get the kids that are really interested in
Yeah.
either the outdoors or just in general, just like health and wellness and things like that. I feel like that could be a great
dude,
demographic.
Yeah,
So-
I think there's a lot of kids that have no clue what they want to do, that aren't super interested in school, right? They don't want to sit down and like, do a math test or whatever, that would grab onto the stuff and just take
And
it
go
and
with
run
it.
with
But
it.
part of it is too is if you just go to the Gen X or the Boomer generation, the kids had access to all of these like extracurricular activities that were specific to stuff like this, survival, like the Scouts, like Boy Scouts of
Yeah.
America. You have a lot of these different programs that were really kind of the after school programs that weren't sports, right? There was like this transition that happened like in the late 80s and 90s where all of a sudden, the outdoors wasn't cool, but sports was everything. So kids they'd go to school and then they'd do sports, and then that was it. But it seems like this is it's almost like a civics. It's almost like one of these life skills.
Oh,
that
absolutely.
used to be taught all the time.
It just
And
isn't as much
for the
anymore.
last few decades, it hasn't. And so I can't help but think the best way for us to get a more educated population in this, especially in our own local community, is to take some of these things serious. Like, what do we value as really like life skills that no matter what age, you're going to be able to utilize this as you go forward.
To go back to that age category too, man, if you're talking 10 to 20, like, dude, like, how many of the kids are out there just mountain biking by themselves?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
and I've ran some 911 calls where it's like, this guy scorpioned over his handlebars coming downhill.
Yeah, and they're
over by that
taking
Red
their
Bull
electric.
Rampage.
Like I see
Yeah,
kids
the
like
Sorons.
on two of them on a single scooter. This is not safe in the military, but even the Surons, even the ones that they don't have pedals. These aren't like hybrid bicycle, electric bikes. These are motorcycles, electric motorcycles.
They're so much fun though.
They're so much fun. But you can't hear them.
Sketchy.
But they're sketchy
when
They're
you get the
sketchy.
wrong
Well,
kid
I
on
mean,
it.
we've got a friend in the real estate industry that had a kid that had a horrifying accident, and it was 2 kids on a scooter, and
They're not safe. In the military,
yeah,
you can't ride
tough,
those like little scooters,
let
like
you.
around the cities and stuff like that. I've had multiple buddies that are, like you're not allowed to get on them. They're not safe. They're like, no. If you're contracted in the military, you can't ride. The scooter.
But there's usually alcohol involved with that too. So
a lot of times, not with the
I've
kids.
seen that firsthand.
Not a lot of with the kids,
no.
but
not with kids.
the adults.
But yeah,
you're right.
You come out and do a wilderness first aid class or a wolfer. Like, we teach you how to use, like, how to splint arms just out there using bushes and sticks. Like, it's awesome, right?
Yeah.
So even if you're not carrying anything, you're like, okay, this arm looks really bad, right? I mean, dude, broken bones. Everybody has a different like reaction when they first see him, because if you see a leg at a right angle when it's supposed to be straight, you're like, oh.
my first reaction is,
Yeah,
Dude, I had a guy leave one of the stop to play classes because he was passed out. And don't get me wrong, I was showing some pretty graphic
might
footage
be
like
me.
on the video, because like this guy cut his artery
that might be me.
and it's just
man.
spurting blood. And dude, this guy just turned white. Just
pass out.
Yeah, some people are not. Some people.
I'm
Get
like,
on.
dude, you're good, man. Get
My
out of
nephew.
here.
You just start talking about blood, and he'll go white, and he'll just like start to
Dude,
pass out.
it's so funny,
it's
man.
an
I don't know
empathy. It's
what
like-
it is. Yeah, some
My
people
oldest
like,
broke his arm in lacrosse, and when he was sitting on the field, and I walk out there, like the dad, and I look at it, and his arm is, at a right angle, and I'm like, oh boy.
you're like, don't pass out in front of everybody.
Yeah, and then when they popped it back into place in the ER, and I was sitting there, they were like, "Hey, are you going to be okay?" I was like, "Yeah." They popped it back in the cracks. I just was like, "I got to sit down."
I'm not okay.
Hold on.
My face, yeah.
Things are getting blurry. It's getting dark in here.
Going back to my point is that there's a certain percentage of population that just they're not equipped. Whether it's emotionally and physically, just their own biology is set up to do some of these things.
Yeah,
well,
for sure.
Maybe incorporate into your class mental training on dealing with blood and bones.
Honestly,
know
I
how to
think
do
that's
it.
just like exposure therapy.
Exposure
Honestly,
therapy,
like you need to see it and you can figure out if
But
it's
I don't
for you
want
or
to
not.
expose myself to more of that.
Well, one of the things that I have that's really cool is like one of our stop to bleed like trainers. We have it like hooked up to a little tube, so we actually push like fluid that looks like blood through it. I want to start like heating it up, man, because once you actually stop like a real bleed, it's kind of weird because you're like, oh, dude, that was warm. Like, why is it warm?
Yeah, it's
right?
98.6 degrees, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's how warm it
however
is.
hot that person
Right?
is.
Yeah.
So that's what we do, right? When you're using this gauze to pack this little cube that's just made out of silicone, where we're pumping it full of blood. So again, like that exposure, right? Like, okay, it's not the real thing, but like it's more realistic because so many, like, again, any training, again, in my opinion, any training is good training.
Yeah.
But the more we can get it to like real life, the more I feel that people are going to be more equipped to be like, okay, dude, it's game time. Let's go. I've got this. Rather than just like, oh gosh,
What do I do? What do I do?
What do I do? Right?
Totally, man.
So, and again, it's individual people too. Everything's personality driven. Like, you never know. Some people are just have the knack for it. Other people don't. All good. But the more people we can get trained up, man, like, awesome.
So
Super rad.
the next class, do you have one on the calendar yet?
Yeah, so I'm shooting for mid-June. Mid-June. I'm going to post some dates on it. I'm talking to the guys who's got the classroom, and then just availability of the instructors to come down.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I just need a little bit more training aids to make it so I can have larger classes. Right now, the classes are about 12 people is what I can handle just by myself. Anything more than that, I'm going to have like 2 or 3 people there to help with skills. The way the class works, it's pretty fun. I do like a little lecture thing. We go over basic anatomy and physiology. We talk about like what's an artery, what's a vein, what does your heart do? When you get hurt, like what's it supposed to look like? And then after we get done with that little lecture phase where I show some videos of people being dumb or taken around, or real world scenarios of people applying tourniquets to things that are actually bleeding, we'll go and we'll actually do that, right? I mean, we can break for a lunch or a snack or something, potty break, whatever, and then we'll go into, okay, this is a tourniquet. Here's how we're applying it. This is how you pack a wound. This is an emergency trauma bandage. How does this work? Well, what is it supposed to do? All those type of things. So, I mean, again, like I can tailor the class as well. When I taught the Modern Warriors guys, I'm like, hey, you guys are on the range shooting guns all the time. Like, let's talk about GSWs or gunshot wounds. What are we going to do with these? And it's very applicable to them because they have a whole range bag. I helped them, say, hey, this is what you should have in a medical kit. Here's what we've used. Here's what you're comfortable with. But when it comes to just everyday life, just having that soft set of skills, dude, you never know when you're going to see a car accident. You never know when you're going to see somebody crash a bike on Riverwalk Trail.
Yeah.
And
trip and a kid could break their leg, hiking.
Easy, Bro, there's a video on YouTube, if you guys ever want to go look this up, of somebody with a varicose vein that popped while they're in the shower. And it's just their leg, and it looks like an arterial bleed. It is literally just shooting blood. And you're like, that's a varicose vein.
I'm not going to look that up. I'm not going to look that up.
I am also not going to look that up.
Okay, hey, long story short, it shouldn't bleed like
I'll
that,
look
right?
it up real quick.
Getting on there now. So, I mean, you never know. Everybody's got a story of like, oh my gosh, this one time, this one person was bleeding. And it's like, if you got a fanny pack with med kit, like, dude, you could be a hero. That's cool. Do it.
I broke a piece of wood one time, and like a 4 or 5 inch long splinter stuck right in one of my veins right here. And
Real life?
it was stuck in there, and I was like, what am I supposed to do? And it wasn't very big, but I grabbed it, and it was probably 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch stuck in my arm, and I pulled it out, and blood started squirting out.
Okay, and that's why you leave impaled objects in place. I'm just saying.
I didn't know. I pulled it out in my front
vessels.
yard. I pulled it out, and it was squirting like a sprinkler, and I was like, well,
let
I guess
them
I
at the hospital
so
take it out so they can help you stop the bleeding.
Well, I didn't go to the hospital. I stopped the bleeding, and then my muscle was sore for like a week. It was stuck in there.
Okay, cool guy.
But if it was bigger,
my own doctor. Just kidding.
I probably would have just died in my front yard. Bled out.
Call me next time. I know where you live. I'll be there.
There's some basics in here. We're missing out. Yeah, keep
Anyway,
keep
it was a
the
fun
objects
story.
in there. That is a fun story.
Dude,
So
that's
keep
crazy.
the objects in there.
Dude, dirt biking.
Even wood.
There's so many videos on YouTube of guys catching
dude.
large branches in their boot.
I saw that.
Oh my
seen that.
gosh.
Yeah.
It's
Dude,
horrifying.
gnarly. And dude, you never know. Like, what if it hits an artery, right? Like, dude, they stop the bleed in the wilderness.
I'm gonna
And
pass
If it's
you're
not bleeding,
a 2-hour.
don't take it out.
dirt bike
Am I
ride
white?
back to
I'm
your
going to pass
truck.
out.
Yeah. Huh?
Am I white? I'm going to.
You look a little
you're
pale.
getting a little pale. All right, here let's take a quick break because I want to talk. When we come back, I want to talk about emergency preparedness, like community preparedness. On like let's take it up a notch. So we talked a little bit small town, small event type situations. Let's take it up a notch because I want your thoughts on like. What if there's a big, something massive, super volcano blows up, asteroid hits,
Earthquake, dude. We're overdue.
Earthquakes.
We talk about it a lot.
those kinds of
state
things.
levels.
I want to come back and we'll talk about that in just a sec.
Okay, cool.
Okay, let's do that.
If you're looking for a fresh, roasted cup of coffee, look no further than FS Coffee Company, St. George's newest coffee shop located downtown at Tabernacle and Main Street. You'll find the finest ingredients and a great price, with a menu that has something for everyone. You can visit them in person or online at fscoffeecompany.com.
This is the most fascinating conversation I have because I think about this all the time. Major disaster. Have you ever heard of Starfish Prime?
Starfish?
Starfish Prime.
Is it something to do with Patrick Star from SpongeBob? Just like hanging out with Transformers? Optimus Prime? Pretty close. Combination of two.
Super duper close.
Okay.
So I was listening to Rogan. I made Jeff listen to it too. It's a whole conversation around how the moon landing's fake. This one guy, he interviews this one guy who thinks the moon landing is fake. And it was
pretty compelling evidence, by the way.
There's some really interesting evidence in there. However, the most interesting part of that podcast was he went on this rabbit trail of Starfish Prime, and it's where the U.S. military detonated a nuclear bomb in space. They detonated above where the International Space Station currently orbits, and in an attempt to do some kind of experiment. But 900 miles away in Hawaii, it knocked out 300 telephone lines, set off burglar alarms, like did all this like EMP damage 900 miles away. And they thought they had plenty of distance, right? With what the distance was. And if you just like anywhere on the East Coast, we're like 900 miles away, you know? So like thinking of like, whether it's an asteroid impact or whether it's super volcanoes or a nuclear bomb, whatever it might be, is that as much as we're pretty far away from a lot of stuff, we're not that far away. And then we're really, really not self-sufficient in Southern Utah. Like we don't really have, like we have one set of power lines that comes from the north. We have one set of power lines and those are knocked out and we're instantly relegated to St. George City has a 1 gigawatt battery and a natural gas power plant that could run power for the county on a rolling blackouts, right? So power is really, really isolated. Food, most grocery stores
3
apparently
days. We have maybe 3
but I guess
days.
every grocery store, like all grocery stores run on basically 3 days of food on a rotating basis, right? So
just
like,
in time delivery from the trucks.
yeah, exactly. And so, or whether we have, you know, the gorge, there's something happens in the gorge and then, you know, the road goes out in the gorge, like an earthquake or something, road goes out in the gorge, you know, there's some legitimate natural disaster issues that could put the population here in jeopardy. What do you think, what should people do? Like,
yeah, I love this topic. By no stretch of the means am I a prepper. However, I think there
I'm
is
disappointed. I thought you were a prepper. I should have had somebody else on. Just kidding.
I'm not gonna. Well, I secretly I am. I just didn't want anybody to know.
He's not a prepper. He's prepped.
Don't come to
He's
my
already
house.
he's already
He
prepped.
doesn't need to prep.
He's not a prepper.
No, it's a cool subject, man. I really do, because I think a lot of people get turned off the subject of like, oh my gosh, that's never gonna happen. We're never gonna have the purge. I'm like, yeah, you're right.
purge.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
We might not. However, there is a very real possibility that something else is going to happen. So, and again, I'm kind of a nerd on this subject. We talk about it in the intelligence realm. I talk about it when I'm teaching my EMS class. However, we don't spend too much time on it, just because again, it doesn't happen. There's a real chance or a real possibility that this does happen, though. If you look at the FBI and the DHS, they both put out every single year what's the word? Like a publication that says like, hey, here's the top 15 things that we're worried about when it comes to threats against the United States. Same thing with FEMA. Every single year they say, hey, here are the things that we're worried about. And they train all of the guys that work for FEMA on, if X happens, here's what we're going to do. This past year, there was 5 of them that were big, and I forget what they were. I know one specifically was school, like a mass shooting, not at a school, but at a mall, right? We've got a mall here. So there are things that are talked about on a federal level and at a state level that is concern, and that the emergency medical services and law enforcement agencies, that they actually do talk about and worry about. The big thing that, like, we're talking about large scale, right? Yes. Like, do I think nuclear weapons are ever going to happen? No, not personally, but like, guess what? The DHS and FBI have both put out things about EMPs. Or more specifically, one that's really worrisome is cyber attacks. And again, right, like I'm really going to try my best not to. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. That's what they all say. Because there is a lot of conspiracy around this stuff, and I'm really going to try really hard to avoid.
It's only a
all of
conspiracy
that.
till it either happens or it becomes proven true.
But then it's still a conspiracy. A conspiracy is like a set like collective of something going wrong, right? And
Right.
when it comes to some things, natural disasters aside, when it comes to some things, that is a conspiracy. They're conspiring to set a population into chaos,
Sure.
right? And
So-
and what are the ways to do that?
Yeah.
Right. So you named a couple, like an EMP or cyber attacks, these kinds of things.
I'll directly address some of it again. So, because I mean, that's kind of like a vague statement. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Here's what I don't think is happening. Again, I could be wrong. I'm open to stuff. I don't think that the U.S. government is actively trying to shut down food processing plants or this or that. I mean, that's a lot of the stuff that you see on social media, right? It's like, oh, they're the ones that want our infrastructure and our electronic stuff to be prone to attack so that they can. I don't think that's the case. What I do think is the case is that when you look at China as a near peer threat. Okay, so if a little bit of military intelligence stuff for you guys, there are the big four is what we call them: Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. Those are the countries that have been
Axis
deemed
of evil.
Yeah, sure. Kim Jong-un's a character. Those are the ones that are deemed like, hey, these are the greatest threats to the U.S. right now. And when you look at near-peer threats, peer-on-peer, like we're coming out of 20 years of a coin environment, counterinsurgency, where we've been in Iraq, Afghanistan, we've had air supremacy, all this stuff. And now we're moving into LISCO. And the war in Ukraine has highlighted that. LISCO stands for large-scale combat operations. And it takes, like, you have Ukraine and Russia. Ukraine wasn't really a peer, but because we've done so much money into it and given them so many weapons, now they can kind of hold their own just a bit. By the way, Russia just launched an offensive this summer, and they're actually being pretty dang successful, which is a little bit sketchy.
They're moving from town to town at a pretty heavy clip at this point.
They are. So when you look at the peers, like what capabilities they have, what can they do? How can they touch us? Now, the U.S. is awesome, right? We're surrounded by oceans. And then on our south and our north, we've got two neighbors who we actually have pretty dang good relationships with. For the most part, like we're dang safe, man. There's no other country in the world like us. China, in terms of geography and stuff like that, is the only other country that's as diverse as the U.S. And that's why our military is so freaking dope, is because we have all these different warfare schools that we can go to. We have jungle environments, we have desert environments, we have mountain environments. And so that's why we're able to, the term is force project. And we've got 11 aircraft carriers. The next biggest country, China, has like 2 or 3. Like, right? I mean, we just blow them out of the water. And even then, they're not that cool. Because guess what? Like, the U.S. is actively involved in, like, deception campaigns where we put out, like, fake blueprints and stuff. So China was all stoked because, like, look, we built this aircraft carrier built off the U.S. blueprints. And then it fell in half. and we're like, okay, was that one of the fake blueprints? That it just, like, because legit, that was one of them, right? Like, one will blow up when you turn it on. One will break in half when you put it on the water. And that's what happened. Hilarious, right? So when you look at what China and Russia are capable of in terms of like EW or electronic warfare, they do have the capabilities. Will they attack the U.S. with those capabilities, right? That's the big question. Who knows? Who knows? Given current geopolitical events and things that are going on in the world, it's a possibility. There is an escalation of force happening right now. Like we were talking about at the beginning, just willy-nilly, like the Iranian president is now dead due to a helicopter crash. They immediately
and his chief
blamed
foreign minister.
Yep.
The two of them.
Immediately blamed Israel and the CIA, which who knows if we were involved or not. There's a lot of TS stuff out there. Who knows? Now, when it comes to St. George, right, let's tie this back in from a global aspect down to, hey, we're local here in St. George. Yeah, dude, like it's not a bad idea to be ready, to have an extra week's worth of food and water for your family just in case. And that's not anything that people need to be upset about. Like, oh, I don't want to be a prepper. Oh, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist. No, dude, like, what's the point? Like, are you going to get so far into it that it ruins your life? I disagree with that. And there are people out there where that's all they think about is the end of the world.
Or all they post about on
social
Instagram.
media. Yeah. I mean, dude, is it going to happen? Most likely not. Right. But at the same time, like, why not just have a little bit? What's it going to hurt? Right. You don't have to tell people, but go out, dude, and buy a week's worth of food, please. Because guess what? Let's say something happens. Let's say it's not even a terrorist attack where it's a potential outside threat. Let's say it's an earthquake.
Yeah.
Like we're supposed to have along the Wasatch Front because we're some 400,000 years overdue for it. And all of a sudden, like, we can't get trucks from up north or we can't get anything from Vegas. And even then, yeah, we've got 3 days worth of food. Now, the good news is we don't live in New York. New York scared me so bad when I was over,
People
dude.
living on top of each
Bro,
other.
there's 8 million people in that city, and it's literally just bridges that take you over to freaking New Jersey and all this. I'm like, this is miserable, man.
Bridges
What
and
if
tunnels,
we get nuked?
yeah.
Because
Bridges
we
and
are a freaking target, right?
Yeah.
So here, like, there are a lot of resources where people are a little bit more prepared, I would say, as a community than other places, which is awesome. And, you know, like, one of the things is like the LDS church.
Yeah, we were talking about this. And this is where I was growing up in Salt Lake. Because I was an LDS, I didn't really realize that all my neighbors around me were all like prepped out. But then as I got older, and then when I came back to St. George, I was like, man, this is actually pretty awesome how organized, you know, just the church as a body, they are set up in a really organized fashion for if something goes horribly wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is really cool, man, because when you look at like the fact that they appoint certain people to be like, hey, bro, if something goes down, like you're it.
Yeah, you're the guy.
You're the guy that's in charge.
Yeah.
To make sure that the people in your community are taken care of. Like, that's pretty dang cool, man. Like,
Yeah.
whatever your opinion is on the church, whatever, it's like, hey, man, they're actually a little bit more prepared than your average bear
Yeah.
for an event of that caliber. Now, here's the things that my mind goes to. It's like, okay, let's give ourselves a scenario where we've got 72 hours where we have no outside help, right? Because I mean, there's going to be certain things that happen at the state level. The National Guard is going to get activated. The National Guard has a unit called the HERF, or the Homeland Response Force, that are specific to these type of disasters and helping as they need. Now, but that only goes so far, right? There's other things where locally we're going to be concerned with. They're going to activate emergency services. They're going to do all this other stuff. But when we're talking about health earlier, right? If everything goes out for 72 hours, like, do you have what you need medications wise? Do you have what you need food and water wise to like last that 72-hour period? Or what if it's a week? All of a sudden, once you get into the week, dude, things get really hairy. And we have examples of this happening, man. Texas. Let's look at Hurricane Sandy. I mean, dude, people were like going out and shooting each other in the street after a week for a can of beans, right?
Yeah, it doesn't
Sketchy.
We digress into chaos, like absolute barbarism,
Right.
And we have tons of examples. It's like a fully Western society or community,
Right.
And then all of a sudden, in just a blink of an eye, it's like just horrible chaos.
And that wasn't nationwide, right? That
Right.
was so local to that one portion of the
Exactly,
East Coast
exactly.
or whatever. So there's a lot to think
I
about.
feel ill prepared to where, like, me living in this community, I don't, truthfully, like in this moment right now, if something like that were to happen, I'm legitimately just like looking to my friends, like the people that are immediately around me, my parents, both sets of parents, my in-laws and my parents, all four of them, they're both at an age to where they're gonna need the support. It's not like I can go to them to get the support. It's they're gonna need the support, right?
Yeah.
And we have a huge retired population, right? To where it's I just can't help but think, if I feel unprepared as connected or as at least engaged in the community as I am, and I feel ill prepared to if something like this were to happen, like where to go and like who to organize, I can't imagine there's not more people out there that either they haven't thought about it or they're feeling the same way I am.
Yeah.
So it's like, where, what do I do?
Right. And it goes so much deeper than just food and water too, right? Like, let's say it happens in the winter and we don't have power. Right. It gets
Power's a
cold here in the
huge
desert,
question.
right? It's either
Yeah.
super hot here or it's super cold.
Yeah.
So do you have enough blankets? Do you have any type of light source? Do you have anything where you can charge a phone if there is service to try to get information from the outside world? Do you have like a small crank radio? Like all this stuff is like really available. And like there was a big run on it during COVID because people started to realize like, oh my gosh, dude, I actually am unprepared. I mean, dude, look at toilet paper, right? I don't know about you guys. I had to use my hand for like 2 weeks. I'm kidding. But dude, it was just like absurd where a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, dude, like this is an actual thing that could happen.
Yeah.
Let's get ready for the next one around. So I do think it's like kind of on the back of everybody's mind. But at the same time, like as who's put their money where their mouth is and gone out and bought the extra food and gone out and got some type of container for water where you actually, hey, are you checking that every year? Because guess what? Water can go bad if you've introduced bacteria or whatever else to it. Do you have a water filter? I mean, dude, I'm a huge fan of like, I've got a big Berkey that I can grab and go, and filter water out from the little stream by my house if I absolutely needed to. So having all of that stuff in mind is definitely good. Will it happen? Hopefully not, right? It's not like I'm not on here trying to peddle doomsday, like it's gonna happen, you gotta be ready. But dude, why not? Why not?
So those emergency services, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's like
sure.
FEMA, like in some of those hurricanes, like I heard stories where FEMA, they didn't have water.
Yeah.
And then FEMA didn't have the ability to organize and get
Right.
water to them
Right.
either, right? And I think a lot of people look up and like, oh no, there's somebody here to help me.
Dude,
There's going to be somebody here to help
That's
me.
a big issue, right? And there's this really cool company called
How do I feel confident that there are people around here in this community that they will help me?
Oh, for sure.
Like, I just don't know. Who do I look to?
Yourself, to be honest. And that's what I was just going to say is there's a company out there called 90 Seconds Out. I follow them on Instagram. They're really cool. And they have a big old flag that says, expect a self-rescue, right? Because at the end of the day, like ultimately you're your own responsibility.
Yeah, nobody's coming.
I want
save
you to tell me that
Yes.
there's this really organized situation where I'm going to be just fine.
Bro, I've been in the National Guard for 11 years. I could tell you, like, they're not that. great.
Nobody's coming to save you.
I mean, again, I feel bad.
They're
saying
great,
that because
but
I love
they're
the
not
organization. They're great,
organized in a way to be
but
able
bro,
to do.
look at how like
something
the
like that.
size of the population. The National Guard is an organization, and now look at the size of the population. It
Yeah.
just doesn't. The math doesn't
ratio.
math.
Yeah.
it doesn't math. The math doesn't math to math.
Math's not checking out.
Oh man, I'm having a hard time with words.
Feel getting tongue tied.
Yeah, it's the ghost.
So
The Alpha GPC.
it's the ghost. So okay, so expect to self prepare. Is that what you said?
No, expect to self rescue.
Self prepare.
But I like that. We'll coin our own phrase.
We're off track. So
That could be your new company slogan. Self-prepare.
Self prepare.
expect. You get it. You get it. So okay, so
It's spreading.
as an individual, I've made preparations for myself. Now how do I where would I plug into? Right? So we're in the suck. We're in the middle of it. It's 3 days in. We still don't we're maybe rolling power outages, but there's no do you think we should get out of town?
No, because where are you going to go and what does that look like?
Well, yeah,
Right.
like what if Vegas is fine?
Hey, if Vegas is fine, like if you
Try to
got
go
a place
there.
to go, but like guess what? If all of us are just like, well, I guess we'll just get
All
up and go
go.
to Vegas, guess what we're gonna do? We're gonna overwhelm Vegas.
Right.
Right?
So-
So if there's emergency services set up there where they're like, hey man, we're prepped. If you guys can get out of town, come here. Let's go.
Would I go
no
to
problem.
the local ward? Do I go to the stake? Do I like show up and say, "Hey, I'm here to help"?
That's
like, is
what
that what the situation
I
is set up here?
anticipate seeing, right? Because again, like hopefully the mayor and other things are going to happen, especially at a state level, right? Things are going to be activated up north. Governor Cox is going to say, okay, I'm declaring a state of emergency. I'm activating the National Guard because we need to handle this. There should be points of contact set up, liaisons or PAOs, public affairs officers, that are giving information to say, hey, this is what we have set up. Here's where you can go. This is what we need from you to make this happen, right? Now, again, it depends on the resources. And there's that term I used earlier, mutual aid. Like if something really bad happens down here in Utah and we as a National Guard or state government are like, hey, we need help. The government, the federal government will be like, okay, cool. Yeah, we'll help you out. That's what should happen, right? I mean, look at what happened was it Hurricane Harvey? What's
Katrina?
the one? No, the one that hit Puerto Rico.
I don't know.
A couple of years back.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, yeah.
I know which one you're
Katri-
talking about, but I don't know the names
Yeah,
of them.
What was it?
Wasn't Katrina.
No,
Ted.
I don't. It was some weird name.
Stephen.
Puerto Rico got hit by a
Steven.
hurricane, Steven. Now look at like what happened, right? The federal government was like, okay, because guess what? Puerto Rico has its own National Guard units, I think. Don't quote me on that, actually. I know I went to basic with a lot of Puerto Rico guys. Don't know if they've got their own National Guard, but as a territory, they were.
Hurricane Maria.
Oh, it was Maria.
Maria.
In
Maria.
17, 18 maybe?
Yeah.
Okay, so they had because they get some federal aid, I guess.
They got a lot of federal aid.
Okay.
Right? I mean, that was the federal government's like, yeah, we're going to step up. We're going to help you. They sent a whole bunch of stuff with water. Now, again, the whole thing got foobarred, right? Because they had waters on water cases sitting in an airport hangar that nobody knew was there because local government had somehow like dropped the ball, right? That stuff happens. And it's dumb. Like, was there politics involved? I'm sure. Whatever. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, there was assistance provided. And it's really going to be up to state and local leaders to say, we're going to distribute this as needed. And again, the National Guard is going to play a role in that. Local agencies are going to play a role in that. The state government's going to play a role in that. I think we'll be pretty okay here.
What's the hierarchy of chain of command? So you end up with we have the governor and the mayor, and then is the National Guard going to step in outside of the mayor, and the mayor is going to be organizing emergency services locally, so like just a police SWAT, right? All of those things, the
Yes.
county level, or is it like commissioners? It seems like what ends up happening is because we've have all these different chains of command that are all separate. It seems like the reason we get these gaps is because
They don't talk to each
there's not an organized, emergency chain of command. Is that true, or is there?
Yes, and I think it'll be better here. And because we are a smaller community where we do have some guys that are really like pretty squared away. Again, we have like the Washington County Sheriff.
Right, the sheriff.
And he's going to be really the big one that's in charge of like the local resources. And then you have the National Guard. Now, the National Guard, we specifically answer to the governor and the president, right? So there's two different types of orders. I don't have to get into a rabbit hole on this, but you have Title 10 and Title 32. If we're activated via the state, we're going to be under the control of Governor Cox, unless something happens where the federal government comes in and federalizes us and says, okay, guess what? You're working for me specifically right now. And I did this a number of times, actually, when I was a part of the California National Guard. We were living in Sacramento for a number of years right after we graduated from college. All of the like the Paradise Fire, you remember that one? That one that ripped through the town?
Yep.
Yeah,
I was on ground
rough,
the day after it went through the town, dude. Like, it was
my
wild.
gosh.
I was in a Humvee, and we're like, it looked like an apocalypse movie.
Yeah.
There were vehicles rolled over with bodies inside of it. I'm like, oh my gosh, man. And you can't see like 6 to 7 feet in front of your face because the smoke is so bad. So that was like a state emergency, right? And we were activated as a National Guard to go and help out. And what we did is we supplemented the local sheriff, the Butte County Sheriff's Office, and we were working on search and extraction teams where we're going through the buildings looking for bodies, we're looking for survivors, you name it. And we were also there doing distribution operations. We were doing decon operations. We were doing entry control points. We were looking for looters, and it all depends on the unit, right? Like the National Guard is an incredible resource. Like, it really is. We have so many different types of units. Now down here in St. George, we've got, 2 specific units of the armory here. We've got the Triple Deuce, which is a field artillery unit. And then we have my unit, which is the 141 MI. And both of us have in the past taken on that HERF responsibility where we have guys that are trained to do natural disaster relief type of stuff. On top of that, we do riot stuff. Like, so there are soldiers down here that are ready, like at a moment's notice, to be like, boom, that notification goes out. It's like, get to the armory, get your stuff on, let's go.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a quick response, right? Like, I think St. George, given what we're talking about, so we're going to have the LDS Church that's got their stuff. We've got individual preparedness, which again is what I think we need to drive home, is like, be ready yourself. Because if you don't have to go to a supply point to go get food or water, like, dude, you've got it made. Just hang out in your house. You've got the National Guard. You've got possibly federal resources coming in. There's a lot of agencies that are going to be all activated to help in the case of, let's say, an earthquake or a natural disaster of some sort.
I feel much better now.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, if it happens, we probably won't. Like, oh, I had a warm and fuzzy, and now look, it's happening. What do I do?
Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? Isn't that
Yeah, Mike Tyson.
Mike Tyson quote.
So I haven't brought this up, but there is a thing I'm working on. This is my other passion project. It's we're writing this book called When the Lights Go Out, where it talks about like how to get water, how to purify it, how to do like food preparation and stuff like that. We were like, it was kind of like an idea that we had. My wife and I were like, oh, that would be kind of fun. But if you're really worried about it, go get on ChatGPT, dude.
Yeah.
And say, what do I do? Write me an emergency plan if I need to do this, and it'll give you all of that. And then print it out and then laminate it and put it in your kitchen cabinet, dude. And you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have power for a week. You can go in there and be like,
I had a great
this
app on my phone,
Yeah.
and then it needed updating, and then I couldn't use it.
dude,
So
scary.
So disappointed. I was like, this is the
scary.
worst survival app ever. Should work all the time.
That is so
Why do I have
funny.
to update it?
Can't even survive an update.
Can't even survive an
Right.
update. I was so mad.
Yeah. So, I mean, and then again, like having the know-how, going and paying for education, I think that's just such an underrated thing, man. Like you go, my buddy tried to take, he went to one of these prepper courses. I teach wilderness first responders with this guy. Wilderness first. Woofer. He's so cool, man. He goes in the Amazon and he takes people down there and trains them. He goes to Cambodia. He's in Alaska right now teaching these people up north.
Nice.
He goes all over the place. The guy is amazing. and actually knows his stuff. And he went to this prepper convention, and I was like, "Hey, I'm doing warfare classes." And they're like, "Oh, we don't care. I just want beans and bullets." They just want to buy
Beans
stuff.
and bullets.
Beans and bullets. It's like it's for them. I think it's like a mental thing of like, okay, if I'm trading money, I want something in return. But it's like, well, dude, if you're trading money, like you can have all this stuff, but why are you buying expired IV fluids? Like, how many of you have done an IV before? This doesn't make sense to me,
Wow,
dude.
yeah.
Come to my class, and I'll teach you the medical stuff that you do need to know. Because ultimately, dude, if the world ends, like you're not going to be a doctor, okay? You sell cars. You're not going to magically.
You're not going to be tasked with the medic.
You need an
capabilities.
IV, and I don't know why, but I'm giving it to you with this expired stuff I have. Oh, okay, guy. Sure. So,
Man.
anyway, man, education's a big one. There's a lot of resources down here, but individual emergency preparedness. Dude,
Yeah.
just go buy some extra stuff. Have it in your house just in case you need to weather a storm of some sort. And, who knows?
Just to bridge the gap between when the cavalry arrives, right? Because
Exactly.
we do have systems in place for that. You know, we're not third world. We're still first world.
Exactly.
We still have a lot of these resources that are in play, and luckily we have a lot of really talented people in Southern Utah that have a lot of experience in some of this stuff. So,
and the thing that, you know, to on the final note of what I'm going to say is that gives me a warm and fuzzy is like, we're not, as humans, especially as Americans, we're really not good at preventative stuff, right?
Yeah.
We don't need to
Prophylactic.
be.
Yeah, but we're really dang good
Reactive.
at solving problems when they show up.
yeah.
And that kind of gives me a warm and fuzzy. It's like, okay, man, like we just got hit with an EMP and our infrastructure actually sucks. Like it honestly does. You remember like was it last year or 2 years ago? There's a substations that somebody just like small arms fired, drove by, just started throwing some 223 into the substation and it knocked out power to like an entire county.
Yeah.
for
I heard about that, yeah.
A while. It's like, oh man, that could happen here. Kind of sketch, right? But we're really good at solving problems. So hopefully somebody will step forward and be like, hey, we could do this instead. We've got this.
Yeah.
But what are you going to do in the meantime? Right. You know, do you have a generator? Like, I mean, so here's the thing. Like, I don't have a generator. I think it would be awesome to own one because Honda makes those super small ones.
Yeah.
But it costs like $1,000, right? So, I mean, some of those things might be outside of the price range for certain people. But you know what's not is like canned goods. Clean water. Go to Sportsman's Warehouse, dude. They got those little small plastic tubs. I'm sure you could probably buy them off Amazon and just have, you know, a couple days worth of water because again, we live in the desert. It's hot here in the summer.
Yeah.
If we get hit in the summer with something, you're like, oh, I really think
We only have one water treatment
right now.
only one water
Dude,
treatment
I
plant,
know.
and there's arsenic in the water, and you have to be careful about the water that you drink, and the water that's being pumped through the pipes might not always be as healthy as you expect it to be.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
if it even is coming through the pipes, right?
Dude,
so
guess
there's,
what?
there's just little things that
Go buy a $20 Life straw. And then it's like, if you really need to, go outside your house, find a puddle and just suck that thing up. So there's solutions.
that there's a lot of solutions, but I think we could talk about a bunch of other things too. But at this point, I think we got a lot here to digest and for people to be thinking about. Thanks for coming on. Good luck with Red Desert Rescue, man. I know you're just getting it up and running, but I can see a lot of value in it, and I think a lot in the community are going to catch on to it.
Definitely.
And there's a lot of communities, like just networks, and you know, whether it's the side-by-side community or whether it's, you know, just the youth associations, schools, you know, that can benefit from some of that education.
Well, if you don't mind, man, shameless plug, right?
Plug it.
So Red Desert Rescue, if you are looking for somebody to teach a stop the bleed class, if you are looking for just general medical training for your company, for your family, even like I do specific tailored classes depending on what you want to come away with. So look out for, you know, follow me on Instagram. Look out for Stop the Bleed courses. Look for those Wolfer classes that are going to be coming up. Look for, if you're interested in the tactical side of things, we're trying to get up that TECC, that Tactical Emergency Casualty Care. It's super applicable, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to Stagecoach a lot or EDC, something to Vegas.
Events here.
Yeah,
Just
and you want to
events here.
learn how to get somebody off the X and take cover and then apply first aid like that. That's for you, right? It's all coming hopefully sometime soon. Again, the Instagram is Red Des Rescue, and then the website will be up here hopefully within the end of the month, depending on the time I have to put into it. So.
Yeah, we'll plug it into the show notes. But thanks
perfect.
for coming on, man. Brennan, you're the best, dude.
Dude, you guys are awesome.
It was awesome.
Seriously, thank you. I had
All
a ball.
right, guys. Red Desert Rescue. Hope you enjoy the show. We'll see you out there, guys.